Reporter Thulasizwe Simelane is outside the High Court in Durban. He'll be joined by my colleague Annika Larsen, who was in court today, as well as Dasen Thathiah, who has been covering proceedings outside. So Thulas, good afternoon to you, and let's put the whole thing into summation.
Yeah, absolutely, Jeremy. It's something of a political roadshow, and these court appearances involving former President Jacob Zuma always are. I mean, you have the story that happens inside court, usually a very brief affair, but actually you're looking out for what happens outside. So I'm joined by my colleagues, as you say, Annika Larsen and Dasen Thathiah. Let's start with what happened in court, Annika. It's deja vu, isn't it? We were here some 13 years ago. How did it play out today from your perspective? It played out exactly as you had expected, didn't it?
That's right, Thulas. There were no surprises. In fact, counsel had been negotiating before and then met in chambers with the judge to discuss a postponement date, because obviously you need to find out when your legal counsel is available and when the accused is available. It was postponed to June the 8th for further investigation for several reasons. One is that the full docket needs to be presented to the accused number one, who is former President Jacob Zuma from the NPA. By the 15th of May, Zuma's legal team should launch its review application of Sean Abrams' decision, which should be really pending the confirmatory judgment at the Constitutional Court dealing with Dasen. And then they'll meet again here on June the 8th. The court roll is only going to be clear by the 12th of November. So if the NPA had its way, it would start this trial at least by the 12th of November. But with a review application and a possible permanent stay application, I don't see it happening this year.
So from an optics point of view, what did former President Jacob Zuma look like to you? What was your sense of? In fact, you even had a moment to greet him as he was making his way to the dock there. And he is interestingly sitting next to the representative of Thales SA, someone who's different from the original representative who would have been in court, Jean-Pierre Moinoy.
That's right. Christine Gourrier, she comes down from France. She knows very little about this case, I presume, and she has never met the former president before. He acknowledged her as an accused next to him. He cut a very different figure, I felt, inside court to the one you described to me outside of court. You're in the dock, you're fairly isolated, you're at the mercy of your legal team and the judge before you. He had a lot of supporters in court, but they were very respectful and didn't make a big noise or disrupt proceedings. He looked tired, he looked isolated, and at times defiant.
All right. In fact, defiant actually is the one that became quite relevant as he came out of court, Dasen. You made your way from King Dinizulu Park with the crowd and basically followed the crowd that came out. The crowd grew compared to what you saw during the night vigil last night. What does that say about the level of support for the former president, and also by the end, how big did the crowd actually get?
Well, to us, it's no secret that the former president enjoys a lot of support here, particularly in KZN. And in fact, if you look at the numbers earlier this morning, there were only about, I would say, 100 or 200 people. And in the space of about 20 or 30 minutes, that swelled dramatically before they got on the road and started marching all the way down to the court where we are now. In fact, at the end of it, it appeared to us to be between 1,000 and 2,000, although police are saying to us that it's in the region of about 5,000. But the atmosphere was absolutely electric. If you look at the the vibe as we were walking down, all the way down to the court, and there was even a band. There's even a marching band that came along. There was a lot of interest from the flats that surround the streets, and really, if you had to dissect that support that he enjoys here, and if you look at exactly who was there, you see that it was headed by religious leaders. You also had Delangu Kubona, which was there, that controversial business forum, Black First, Land First as well. You know, some would call these troublemakers in a sense. But the other interesting thing was just the colors, that sea of yellow, green and black that we saw making their way down the streets. You remember that there was a directive that those that are supporting the former president shouldn't be wearing that kind of regalia, but that seems to have not been heeded at all.
Sure. I mean, I found it all interesting, Dasen, in the sense that if you look at some of the people that were there, a lot of them are young people, some of them students in various campuses. And I was just thinking that, I mean, if you go back 13 years ago, some of them would have been in primary school when this matter first went to court, and today here they are. But interestingly, in terms of the alliance, in terms of the political leaders that were supporting him, it wasn't the same as what it was in 2006, thereabouts. But from the KZN perspective, in terms of the ANC leadership, he has support from that side.
No, definitely. He still seems to enjoy that support from the KZN leadership, particularly from that disbanded KZN structure that we had here. Like you mentioned, Thulasizwe Simelane as well as Willis Mkhunu and Super Zuma that we saw. But all of them taking almost a step back and saying that they were here in their personal capacity, them as well, not dressed in those ANC colors, dressed in plain clothes as well. But Thulas, you spoke about the supporters, and I must mention the message that was coming out from them, because I had a chance to engage with some of them as we walked. And a lot of them are just, completely adamant that Jacob Zuma is innocent. And no matter what comes out of court, that will be the belief that they have. And the reason for that is because they feel that he's being victimized. And I'm just paraphrasing what some of them have said. And they say that this issue of white monopoly capital is behind this, and it's because Jacob Zuma was a champion of radical economic transformation. So they are adamant. You saw that today. You saw the numbers that swelled here when we eventually ended up at court, and it seems like he'll be holding on to that support that he's managed to hold on to for this long, for a lot longer.
All right, thank you so much, guys, for joining me. And Jeremy, I suppose let me just end off by telling you about, former President Jacob Zuma. It doesn't take much for him to break into song to sort of express how he feels, and today was no exception. But the song that he chose at the end, before singing, of course, his trademark Mshini Wami, he sang a song that says Ngimanqeba nqeba zinsizwa. It's sort of a song that's very interesting in what, if you listen to the meaning of those words, it basically says, I'm wounded all over, as if to say, I'm wounded by those who are close to me, men that I trusted, but also in a way testifying to the battles that he has survived, having sustained all those wounds, yet survived. So this says, this is a man who's steeling himself for a long fight. He does say that he intends to even challenge the decision made by Sean Abrams, and he talks about this matter getting to the trial phase and potentially the spy tapes being listened to, in the sense, the way he talks about that, he says, if it happens, giving you the sense that if he has his way, it won't even get to that point, given the challenges he intends to mount.
Thulasizwe Simelane in Durban. Now we